Thank you very much, Chairman Roger Wicker, and it's really impressive today that we have bipartisan participation in support of the people of Ukraine. While the title of the hearing is The Cost of a Bad Deal, the only individual standing in the way of peace in Ukraine is war criminal Putin. President Trump has graciously offered Putin a way out of the horrific mess that Putin created, yet Putin continues to insult and mock President Trump, killing the people of Ukraine as they're in their homes. With the Putin invasion of February 24, 2022, the Russian troops were misled to be prepared with their dress uniforms for immediately a victory parade. But instead, the courageous President Vladimir Zelensky and the brave Ukrainian people have stood firm and made such a difference on behalf of liberty and freedom in the world.
What's up, Patriots? Welcome back to America First. If this is your first time here, we're all about putting American interests first and cutting through the establishment propaganda. If you appreciate honest America First analysis, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more content that puts our country first. Today I'm reacting to a recent congressional hearing on Ukraine policy. And folks, what I heard should concern every American who believes our tax dollars should be spent on American problems first.
Putin victory in Ukraine would be a catastrophe, not just for the people of Ukraine, but for every country living in the shadow of the Kremlin's imperial ambitions. Putin is waging a campaign of extermination against free people, so only crime is choosing liberty over tyranny. And he seeks to resurrect the failed Soviet Union. The stakes of the war stretch far beyond Ukraine's borders. If Putin is allowed to succeed, there will be more battered countries than Ukraine. We already see that Belarus has descended further into dictatorship, and we know that the actual president of Belarus is Svetlana Tsikhanovskaya, and so she should be recognized as a legitimate president. Additionally, we see that Moldova has been destabilized with the Russian troops still remaining in Transnistria and never leaving in the Soviet era. Armenia, which is such a great country and is really so strong today, could be dragged back into and be subverted by Putin. And then the Republic of Georgia was crushed under the weight of the puppet regime by Putinists. And also we have NATO allies of the Baltics that are threatened by Putin's attempt to resurrect the failed Soviet Union. I have been very fortunate to see firsthand the people of these countries want democracy, prosperity, and peace, but Putin wants just the opposite. He wants them poor, dependent, divided, and afraid. In Belarus, he props up the illegitimate regime of Alexander Lukashenko, who violently crushed the protests and invited the Russian troops to maintain order. And again, the legitimate president is Svetlana Tsikhanovskaya. And additionally, in Moldova, Russian troops having never left Transnistria and trying to subvert the most recent elections, unfortunately, the people of Moldova stood firm. In Armenia, even as the people turned toward the West, and with such an incredible Armenian-American community supporting, Russia has worked to undermine their sovereignty through military blackmail and economic pressure. Putin doesn't stop at propping up friendly dictators. He sows chaos wherever he can. He arms and finances extremists, spreads disinformation, exploits ethnic divisions to pit neighbors against neighbors. His goal is simple: to make democracy look weak and autocracy and authoritarianism inevitable. That is why peace in Ukraine on Ukraine's terms is critically important. A just and lasting peace will not only liberate Ukraine, it will send a message to Moscow, other neighbors, that freedom still has defenders and tyranny still has consequences. It will strengthen the hand of reformers and weaken the grip of corrupt regimes backed by Putin. And make no mistake, this matters to American families. Putin victory will not continue to Eastern Europe. It will embolden America's enemies everywhere. But a Ukrainian victory will reinforce the message that aggression does not pay and America stands for its values and interests alike. As I believe in America first, you must also believe in Putin last. A world where Moscow dominates its neighbors is not a world safe for American families or our allies. I yield back.
Let me break down what's really going on here and why this matters to you and your family. First, let's talk about the elephant in the room. We're being told this is about bipartisan support for Ukraine, but what I'm hearing is bipartisan support for continuing to write blank checks to a foreign country. While American cities crumble, our border remains wide open, and working families struggle to put food on the table. When was the last time you saw this kind of urgent bipartisan action on securing our southern border or fixing our infrastructure? Now, I want to be clear about something. Putin is not a good guy. Russia invaded Ukraine, and that's wrong. But we need to ask ourselves the hard questions that nobody in Washington wants to address. How do we get here? Why is it America's responsibility to police every conflict around the world? And most importantly, what are the real costs to the American people? The speaker talks about President Trump offering Putin a way out, which actually highlights something important. Trump understands the art of the deal and the importance of diplomacy over endless military engagement. Trump's approach has always been peace through strength, not nation-building and endless foreign entanglements that drain our resources and put American lives at risk. Let's examine this claim about Putin trying to recreate the Soviet Union. While Putin's actions in Ukraine are wrong, we need to look at the situation with clear eyes, not through the lens of Cold War hysteria. The military-industrial complex and foreign policy establishment love nothing more than a new enemy to justify massive defense, spending, and international interventions. How many times have we been told that if we don't fight them over there, we'll have to fight them here? We heard this about Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, and now Ukraine. The speaker mentions threats to Belarus, Moldova, Armenia, Georgia, and the Baltic states. Here's what they're not telling you. These regional disputes have been going on for decades, long before Putin came to power. Eastern Europe has complex ethnic, historical, and territorial issues that didn't start with this conflict and won't end with it. American intervention hasn't solved these problems anywhere else in the world. So why do we think it will work here? Now let's talk about the real costs. We've sent over $100 billion to Ukraine while American veterans sleep on our streets, while our public schools are failing, while fentanyl pours across our border, killing 100,000 Americans every year. Every dollar we send to Ukraine is a dollar that doesn't go to fixing America's problems. That's not isolationism. That's common sense prioritization. The hearing talks about democracy and freedom, but let's be honest about what we're really supporting. Ukraine banned opposition political parties, shut down media outlets, and has significant corruption problems that existed long before this war. We're not defending some beacon of democracy here. We're picking sides in a regional conflict that has little to do with American security or American interests. Here's what really concerns me about this whole approach. The speaker says Putin's victory would embolden America's enemies everywhere. But you know what actually emboldens our enemies? Watching America exhaust its resources and political will in foreign conflicts, while ignoring the real threats to our homeland. China is watching us pour money and weapons into Ukraine, while they build their military and expand their influence. Iran sees us distracted by European conflicts, while they develop nuclear weapons. Our real enemies love seeing us tied down in endless commitments abroad. The argument that we must support Ukraine to show strength is backwards. Real strength means having clear priorities and the wisdom to know when not to get involved. Real strength means securing our own border before worrying about Ukraine's borders. Real strength means taking care of American workers before sending their tax dollars overseas. I keep hearing about the domino effect, that if Ukraine falls, democracy will collapse everywhere. But where was this concern when China crushed Hong Kong? Where was this urgency when our own cities burned during the riots? Where is this passion for democracy when tech companies censor American citizens or when the FBI targets parents at school board meetings? The truth is, this isn't really about democracy or freedom. This is about maintaining the globalist establishment's vision of American empire, where we're the world's policemen, funding conflict and interventions that benefit the military-industrial complex and foreign policy elites, while regular Americans pay the price. Now, I'm not saying we should ignore the world or abandon our allies, but we need to be smart about our commitments and honest about our priorities. We have treaty obligations to NATO allies, and those should be honored. But Ukraine is not a NATO member, and getting drawn into a proxy war with nuclear power is not in America's interests. What would real America First foreign policy look like here? First, we'd push for immediate diplomatic negotiations to end this conflict. Not because Putin deserves anything, but because endless war serves nobody's interests except weapons manufacturers and foreign policy think tanks. Second, we'd make it clear that while we support Ukraine's right to exist, American resources need to focus on American problems first. Third, we'd work with our European allies to take primary responsibility for their own regional security issues. The speaker ends by saying America stands for its values and interests, but sending billions overseas while Americans struggle isn't standing for American interests. It's putting globalist ideology ahead of America First principles. Here's what I want you to remember. Every time they tell you we must intervene somewhere to protect democracy or stop a dictator, ask yourself, what's the real cost of America? What problems at home are we ignoring? What are the long-term consequences of getting involved? And most importantly, how does this make America stronger and more prosperous? We can support Ukraine's right to exist without making it America's responsibility to fund their defense indefinitely. We can oppose Putin's aggression without sacrificing American interests on the altar of global interventionism. We can stand for our values without bankrupting our country in foreign conflicts. That's what America First really means. It means being wise enough to know our limits, strong enough to defend our true interests, and honest enough to admit when foreign policy elites are selling us another endless commitment that benefits everyone except the American people. What do you think? Are you tired of being told that America's problems take a back seat to foreign conflicts? Let me know in the comments below. And remember, if you want more America First analysis that puts our country first, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Until next time, keep fighting for America.